All right, so welcome. We are just going to jump into the notes on Introduction to Linear Inequalities. Like I was saying earlier, this is basically going to be very similar to the solving equations, but we're dealing with things where it's greater than or equal to, or greater than or less than or equal to or less than, right? And so what we have there on the note page is right here, those symbols. So this should be a bit of a review, but the greater or equal to another quantity. So if we have if x is greater than or equal to 2, that would be an example, right? And so the greater value has the wider opening, and the smaller value is going to have the arrow, right? So we could write that as 4 is greater than or equal to 2. Okay. We also have greater than. What sets greater than or equal to apart from just greater than is the fact that you have the line under if it's greater than or equal to. So we could use things like 4 is greater than or equal to 4. And then we could use 4 is greater than 2. Okay? So that's what sets those apart. And so when we start to use things like variables and unknown value, x can be greater than or equal to 2, which means that x could be any number it could be 2, or it could be 3, or it could be 4, and so on, right? Whereas if we just said x is greater than 2, well, then we cannot use 2 to equal x. You would have to be 2.1 is greater than 2, or 3, or 4. Anything bigger than 2, okay? And then for less than, it's just going to, we read it so that the point is facing the left, right? So it's the opposite way. Okay, so then I'm just going to move that up. I think it's still showing up pretty clearly. In example 1, if we're looking at, and now this is something that we see on a regular basis, is a parking meter sign that says that you can only park at that location for 30 minutes. And so which inequality is going to fit that? Well, we cannot park more than 30 minutes, so we're not going to use the greater ones. We want our time to be less than or equal to 30 minutes. If we're exactly 30 minutes, we're okay. We're not going to get a parking ticket. So I'm just going to go ahead and circle that as a solution. And then just move that up so we can see all of example 2. And so a couple of different cases here. So similar signs that we see on a regular basis would be our speed limit can't exceed 55. And so lots of you are starting to get your learners, and that's really awesome. So if we wanted to represent our speed cannot be any greater than 55, so it must be less than. If I use an S, it's going to get confusing and it's going to look like the 5. So what I might do there is just use a P and say that my speed must be less than or equal to 55. Okay? And then B says height restrictions. So this is often, I don't know if you can read that one. This is often if you're going to a fair or somewhere where you're going to get on rides. So they might give you height restriction that you must be at least 102 centimeters to go on this ride. So that means that you have to be more than or equal to 102 centimeters. So in this case, I might use H, and I would have to be taller than or equal to 102 centimeters. And then for temperature, for milk, it must be stored at below 4 degrees Celsius in order to stay fresh. And so I would want my temperature, I might use a T for temperature. I would want my temperature to be less than 4 degrees. Okay, so less than, it doesn't say that it can be equal to 4 degrees, so therefore I'm just going to leave it as less than. And then the very last one there, the 14A, so your age limit for watching this particular show, we would like to have, it would be 14 or older. So my age would have to be equal to, greater than or equal to 14. So hopefully you can see all of those and kind of get the idea of how we're going about that. Let's just go ahead and jump into a couple other quick examples here. So one expression is less than the other. So if A is less than 3, so I would just write that as A less than 3. Okay. For a greater than expression, we're just going to go B is greater than 4, negative 4. So that could be any number like negative 3, negative 2, negative 1. Those are all greater than negative 4. C is less than or equal to 3.1. So C is less than or equal to, so we use that symbol, 3.1. So this is going to be things like, well, 3.1, 3, 2.9, 2.8, and so on. And then lastly, D is greater than or equal to 5.4. So I would just write that as D is greater than or equal to 5.4. So that's going to be values like, for instance, greater than 5.4. So D could be 5.4, or it could be 5.5, or it could be 5.6, and so on, right? So any number bigger. Okay, I'm gonna turn my page here. Got a little bit. So we're gonna get into graphing these inequalities on a number line. And so what would A being bigger or greater than 3 look like on a number line? So then I would just go ahead and I would find where the 3 is, which happens to be here. Okay. And there's 2 symbols, and I'll just kind of draw your attention to this note. So since 3 is not part of the solution because we didn't have an equal sign under it, we're going to use what is called a hollow circle. So when I say hollow, we're not going to fill it in. Whereas if we're dealing with solutions that it's greater than and equal to or less than and equal to, we would use a solid dot. Okay, so back to this, it's greater than 3. So I'm just going to draw a hollow circle. And because A is bigger than that value, we're just going to draw a line in this direction and just overemphasize the arrow in that direction as well. Okay, and then our next question, what about if B is less than or equal to negative 5? We're going to go to where negative 5 is, and because it said that it could be equal to, I'm going to fill in my circle so it's solid. Now B is going to be any number less than, so negative 6, negative 7, those would be less than. And so I'll just continue my line, just making it kind of thick, and also overemphasizing the arrow in that direction to show that it's continuously going in that direction. Okay, so a couple more examples there for you. I will run through these kind of quickly just so you get the idea of that. So for values like t is greater than negative 5, I'm going to find negative 5. This is going to use a hollow circle because it's not equal. And anything bigger is in this direction, so we'll emphasize that direction. I have a nice colored pen so that shows up really nicely, or you can just kind of shade like a fatter line in that direction, but overemphasizing the arrow is also going to help make sure everything's clear. And when we have, now notice in this one what's different is they've put the x on the right side. So x is still, this is like saying x is less than or equal to the -2. So they've switched that around. So previously we always kind of went in the direction of the arrow, like in this case, we would just go in that direction because we started with the variable. In this case, we're not starting with the variable, so it's going to go in the opposite direction, or like this. So if it makes it easier for you to just flip that around, go for it. All right, and so -2 happens to be here. I'm going to fill in my circle because it's an equal to situation, and I want to think about what numbers are going to be less than. So I'm going that way, just make that a little nicer. And if the variable is first, it just goes in that same direction. It's really that easy, that simple. My last example here, oh, I don't think I had you seen that. Okay, so that's the diagram. This last example here, I believe I have a line on my next page, but I do want to just kind of show you what you're going to be doing because you're not going to have these lines necessarily drawn on your paper. So I might just put a line like this. Usually I have 0 somewhere, 1, -1, maybe even 2, right? And so 0.5 is going to show up at about 0.5, halfway. So you would have to put that in. Now, if it's equal to, you're going to fill in and make a solid circle, and it's going to be a value less than . So now I'm going to go in this direction and just emphasize my arrow in that I messed up. And I'm not going to edit anything. So I didn't switch around my, this is that example. Should have went my other direction. So we've got some okay, so we've got our 0, maybe a -1 point, or -1, +1, +2. So right about there is your 0.5, and I want it to be solid, and I want to emphasize greater than. That looks better. Okay, perfect. Just like the classroom, I make mistakes. So we're gonna flip that page over, and we'll just see a couple of other ones. So this very top was what we had seen on the previous page. So that was the 0.5 going in this direction. Overemphasize. Okay, moving on. So to enter a bar, you must be at least 19 years old. So these are going to be word problems. So at least 19 years old means that you have to be greater than or equal to 19. So we would fill that in because it's okay to be 19. And anything older, legally, you would be allowed into a bar. All right, and then now consider this very next one. So you must have 10 items or less to go into the express lane at the grocery store. And so the idea is we cannot have a continuous amount. Like you're not going to have like half a box of cereal or half a Coca-Cola or half a thing of chicken, right? Like you're not going to buy half items of things. You're going to buy full items of things. So instead of doing the continuous line, we would then consider that you would have to have less than 10 items to go through. You must have 10 items or less. So 10 items would be okay. And so we would just put dots at those amounts. Okay, and it would just continue to 0. You're not going to go through the checkout if you have only 0, so we can leave it at that. Just kind of like you're only allowed to have 50 people in Walmart right now. I don't actually remember the number, so you're not going to have half people going in, so you're going to probably, if we were to do that example, we would just have points. Okay, so some other quick examples just like that one. Chantel's mom said, let's see if we can get that onto the video screen, of course. Chantel's mom said she would invite at least 10 people to her birthday. She should invite at least 10 people. So she can have greater than or equal to 10 people. So she's going to have a massive party where she can have that many people. So maybe people, okay? But we're not going to invite just part of a person. So then we would just do a couple of dots. And then if you'd like, you can just put the arrow going in that direction. But having those dots just kind of shows that, okay? And very last part, in most provinces, you have to be at least 16 years old to drive. Now, when we're talking age, that's continuous because you can be 16 and a week, you can be 16 and 3 months old, you can be 16 and 3/4 old, right? So anything greater than or equal to 16. And we're just going to close in that circle. So those are just some quick examples that are going to show you how to graph inequalities. I will post your textbook assignment below, and that's what you can work on. All right, thank you.